Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another live here in a sort of increasingly autumnal London, but dark and gloomy and drizzly today. So hopefully where you are is much nicer and sunnier. So lots of people here already, lots of questions already coming in. So I won't do too much housekeeping stuff before we get stuck in. A few bits and pieces that I did want to point out was, as always, if you do have a question, write the word question so that I know that it's a question rather than it's part of the chit and chat, which is always great to see people discussing and chatting things and answering other people's questions. What else can I tell you? I just wanted to remind you of a couple of offers. The reason I'm bringing this up here, I realized when I did this, I didn't do a blank background. I just wanted to highlight two kind of offers. They're both affiliate offers, one of which is for shore excursions. The reason I'm highlighting that one is I put that in a video a while ago. So it's with Shore Excursions Group, where if you put in TFT 5, you get 5% off. And they sent me a little report the other day, and I realized like more than 100 excursions have been booked and people have got savings. That was very exciting. So I thought I'd put that again. So tootsoftravel.com, Shore Excursions, TFT 5, you get 5% off. It is affiliate link, so I also get some benefit from that as well. So, and the other one, of course, is, as you know, I'm a big fan of the cruise maps, cruisemaps.com, TFT, or if you go to the Cruise Globe, which is completely free. If you ever order anything which you haven't used that link, use TFT and you get 10% off. So I thought I would particularly highlight the Shore Excursions one, because I saw a lot of people saying making some great savings, particularly they've introduced lots of some of the more expensive excursions now in Alaska. So 5% off is quite nice. The other thing I'll do before I get stuck into questions is yesterday's video came out. It seems quite popular, causing lots of comments and discussions. It's around cruising over 55 kind of tips and tricks. So that's there on the channel with lots of tips and tricks. And hopefully if you haven't watched that, you will watch that as well. I'll talk a little bit later about the next cruise I'm going on, because I will be doing a live next Sunday. Then I'm heading off to New York for the next cruise, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Right, there's lots and lots and lots of questions, so let's get stuck into them, and I'll try and answer as many of them as I possibly can within the 60 minutes. Michael, good to see you here again. Always has some good, challenging questions. Are there any cruises you liked so much that you would do again? For example, would you do Egypt twice? So Michael, luckily I saw this just because you posted it just before we went live, so I had a little bit of a chance to think about it. But yes, there are certain cruises, or certainly lots of regions I would do again. But I would quite like to do the Nile again, although probably higher on the list is the Mekong. I would like to do the Mekong again when it comes to river cruises. I did the Mekong sort of in the warmest kind of period, the lowest rainfall. And I came to realize that actually you sort of want to do the Mekong when it's more the rainy season, because all those big sharp kind of storms that come, most of the time it's not raining, but the river expands dramatically, and it's when all the rice paddies come into play. So you see so much more of that side. Also, you can sail through the lake to actually embark much further down the Mekong to do Angkor Wat. Of course, Transatlantic on the Queen Mary 2. I've done that quite a few times. I'm doing that again. Japan is another one for me, which I've done several times. I'm doing it again next year or the year after. I just booked that recently, covering more ports of Japan. Antarctica is another one. Panama Canal is another one. But often when I go to regions, I try to make sure I'm going to many more different ports. So, for example, I love going to the Caribbean, to escape the sort of weather that we've got here now. I'm doing that in November, but try to choose either a line I haven't been on before or a ship I haven't been on before, so I can cover something differently, or a lot of places that I haven't been before. So those are kind of top of mind ones. The region that I probably, Michael, am less looking at doing is Europe and the Mediterranean. I've done a lot of Mediterranean, a lot of Europe, partly when I was doing my global marketing jobs. I've been to lots of Europe, and I found those now for me have become a little bit repetitive, which is a bit telling, I guess. But that's probably a region that's not high on my list. Saying that, I am doing one next year on Windstar, but then I'm doing a sailing ship, so it's going to be a very different experience. Mark asking a question I get asked fairly often is any plans to sail on Ambassador? I don't have any plans to sail on Ambassador. I've certainly this year and next year is completely locked in and pretty solid. 27 has a couple of gaps in. I do keep an eye on some of the Ambassador stuff. I was looking at one point of doing one of their shorter trips, but I think to really get a feel for a line and to be able to do it justice and also have time to film it, I feel like I need to go on at least a week. So I don't have any plans. I probably should go on it, and I keep saying that because so many people ask me about my opinion on Ambassador. A ton of YouTube, good to see you here. Tony, heading out on a Rome to Tampa, Florida, Transatlantic, okay, on Celebrity Constellation soon. Yeah, I guess you must be. What are your feelings about Celebrity? All the best to you. So Tony, take a look at a video that I put out a couple of weeks ago, which was comparing and contrasting the different premium lines, of which of course Celebrity is one. So I talk a little bit about some of my up-to-date feelings on what people are saying about Celebrity. Now, you probably know that Celebrity Constellation is one of their older class of ships, so it's a smaller ship. And I haven't been on the smaller ships. I've only been on the Solstice class and the Edge class. I certainly think that Celebrity have largely upped their game. They are putting a lot of emphasis, though, in the Edge class ships. They've obviously got Excel coming and so on. And I do feel a little bit like they shift their A-team towards that side. So I do get comments from people, and even if you look at the reviews with the oldest Constellation class, even some of the Solstice class, people being more critical. I was on the Solstice class recently. We have a group cruise. I booked another Solstice class Silhouette for next year in June, sort of repositioning from New York to Iceland. So I'm pretty pro on Celebrity. I think they normally have pretty good entertainment. Obviously, if you can afford the retreat, I don't know what you're doing it in, that's really great. On my next one, I'm not doing retreats. Retreats are very expensive. Their prices are getting pretty pricey, but they normally have good entertainment. The food's pretty good. Good choice of especially dining options. And so I think they're pretty good for what they do. Chris, Holland America has changed my itinerary for 2026 Iceland cruise, omitting Inverness and Aberdeen for Lerwick and Runavík in the Faroe. Is this an improvement? Chris, my short answer would be probably not. I don't want to be too negative. In reality, because Lerwick I've been to quite a few times. It's fine. It's an interesting enough little town. There are some quite interesting excursions which tend to be sort of a little bit more kind of landscape type excursions. It's not massively interesting excursions, but it's an interesting place to at least been to the Shetlands and experienced it. There's a very nice kind of church there. It's fine. It's not the most exciting place. I haven't been to Runavík in the Faroe Islands. I'm trying to remember the place I've been to in the Faroe Islands, but the Faroe Islands is quite interesting. But Inverness is obviously fantastic. I really like Inverness as a city. It's a nice city, beautiful sort of old kind of, I guess, Victorian Georgian buildings, something like that. But of course, from Inverness, you can go to try and find the Loch Ness Monster and that sort of stuff. So Inverness is particularly a very nice thing. And Aberdeen is a fascinating place. It's obviously sort of the heart of the oil industry and stuff. But certainly, Lerwick is fine. So it's not a complete disaster, if you like, but it's a pity they're missing those. Would be my particular view. But it will be a great trip, I'm sure. So if you're heading, I guess you're heading out. Are you heading out of Edinburgh? I guess possibly, or you might be heading all the way down from the UK. So let's have a look. Tom, we're back from our Lisbon to Barcelona vacation. Have you had a great time? Have you thought about a future group cruise on an ultra luxury cruise line? Tom, at this point in time, I don't have, after the Panama Group Canal, I have none planned or in planning stage at the moment. I'll review that after the group cruise next year. I've tended not to include ultra luxury. I've tended to go with premium lines, partly because it means the greatest range of people can join. So, for example, on the Panama Canal group cruise, there's about 70 people coming on that, and almost a third of those, yeah, almost a third, heading up for a third. It's maybe 20, a quarter to a third, can't remember the exact number, are solos. So obviously and all my previous group cruises had a lot of solos. So that obviously ultra luxury makes it very challenging, because you can sometimes find a line that will do solo deals, but it does make it relatively tight in terms of who is likely to go on that. So I have toyed with that, maybe finding a mid-ground like Oceania or something. But certainly at this stage, I don't have any active plans on group cruises. And I will obviously keep all that in mind. Hetty is here. So Hetty, yes, I've been following Hetty. Is bouncing on Rotterdam. It looks like it's pretty rough. I mean, it's also those who follow, of course, cruising news will know that there's been a lot of disruptions in other places like New York and stuff, with the various storms passing through. So it's been pretty bumpy and chippy and choppy. So hopefully by next month, end of next month, and it's still sort of part hurricane stormy season. Hopefully I will have I'll get to some of the islands and not be too stormy. I'm looking at the weather for those islands we're going to. I can see that's still quite stormy, rainy. Quentin, how about a video on transatlantic cruises that avoid the US, for example, UK to Canada? Quentin, that would be an extremely short video, to be honest, because the short answer is there aren't really any. There are a couple, very few. So, in reality, the reason that transatlantic cruises exist is most of those are repositionings, and it's lines repositioning ships from the Mediterranean / Europe to be able to start selling Caribbean cruises out of the United States. So by definition, there are almost none, because the whole point of them is moving ships across. So that's why you'll find them not very many. Now, the key exceptions to that would be some lines out of the UK. So specifically P&O, Marella do it. And I've got a feeling Ambassador might be doing it as well. Those lines that move some ships into the Caribbean. So, for example, P&O, as I mentioned, Marella, around about now, I guess, or heading up for now, will send a couple of ships, and they will normally be based out of Barbados, and they will do fly cruises out of Barbados. So they charter flights to move people from the UK into Barbados. They'll do the 2 week long Barbados to Barbados, and then they'll charter people back. So obviously on the repositioning, you can get that. So for example, we've once done a repositioning when it was heading back from Barbados to the UK. So just some Caribbean islands, Madeira, and stuff like that. So that's your main option. So take a look at P&O, Marella. There's a small chance, so a couple of lines like Virgin, that Scarlet Lady, I think, who look to sell of San Juan, they will probably reposition out of Europe and head down directly to San Juan. So you could look at a few lines that sell directly to San Juan. They may head there directly. Now, if you specifically wanted to get to Canada, choices are very limited. So Cunard do run a couple of Southampton sort of to Canada and back. Now, I haven't looked at the itineraries, but I think normally they would include a stop into like New York, for example. But certainly take a look at Cunard. They do, but it's a round trip. So it's not a one-way trip to Canada. It would be a 14 or longer night. Saga as well do some trips to Canada, but again, I'm not 100% sure on that itinerary. I feel like they might also call into New York. So there's a couple of kind of sort of options, but that's about it. Diana and Andrew here calling all ports. Good to see you. Sailing from Dover next May. Is it worth staying there overnight, or can we get away staying in London and heading there the morning of embarkation day? So basically, there aren't any really great hotels or many hotels in Dover. So I tend not to stay in Dover if I can avoid it when sailing out of Dover. So I have stayed, I think when I did Disney, I didn't. I think I was doing a Saga trip out of Dover, and it was I might have done a Virgin. Yeah, a Virgin teaser thing out of when Virgin first, was that out of Dover? Anyway, basically there's like a travel lodge place. It's not great that you can stay at, but there's no great hotels. Now you might be able to find perhaps an Airbnb or something like that, but there's not really great hotels near Dover. Now what you can do though is there is quite a lot of trains heading to Dover, and they have a fast train and then they have slow trains. And the fast trains probably once an hour, and they take about 50 minutes, something like that. And often what you'll find a lot of the lines will do, so I would check this, they often will run a shuttle bus between the station and the port, but you need to check that. Otherwise, you can get a taxi. Now, the taxis can be a bit of a wait for taxis, but there are. But if you are looking at doing the train, make sure you get the fast train, not the slow train. Slow train is quite slow, but the fast train, I guess, uses. I think it probably uses the tracks that were laid down, the high-speed lines that were laid down, and it's quite nice trains. They're pretty efficient. But if you are going to stay in Dover, I think it's a Travelodge. It is about the best I've found. Best I've found there. Other people talking about missing out on Aberdeen. Hiker, good to see you here, Hiker. How does it work with the status match across cruise lines? For example, I will sail on Royal Caribbean this week, but have high status and celebrity. Will Royal Caribbean see that? So Hiker, yes, it should be. Now, if you actually log in to your online account, you should see your status that they're giving you there. That's certainly when I went on Royal Caribbean and stuff. Normally, you can see it there. The only one that I've ever had to specifically apply for within that group is Silversea. I had to specifically ask for a status match with my combined sort of celebrity and Royal Caribbean. That wasn't done automatically, but certainly when I've moved between celebrity and Royal Caribbean, they have done it. But I've normally been able to see it in the online account. It'll show the captain's choice, not captain's choice, captain something or other. So you should be able to see that. Now, for those who haven't spotted it in the news, up until now, Royal Caribbean had been the only one that matched across their brands. Now, very excitingly, Norwegian Group, about 2 weeks ago, have announced they are going to status match across their three main brands, so Norwegian, Oceania, and Regent. But you do have to apply to the cruise line that you're going on to status match. So I'm very excited because actually I have varying degrees of status across those three. But I actually looked and I actually have, after I've done my next trip, I will go up to quite a high level like silver or something on Regent, and I've got a big Oceania cruise with Mark in December. And I then just have to email, you have to email them off, and all you have to do is give them your different account numbers. And following people on Facebook who've done it, apparently it's done very, very fast. So certainly, Heike, you should find between the two it's the same. The second thing I would do, though, come back to your original question, is if not, I would go, what they have on Royal Caribbean is they have a person who's specifically dedicated to the Crown and Anchor, that's what it's called, Crown and Anchor Club. So they have a person nominated there, they have a desk. I would just go and see them. You should find in your room a letter when you arrive telling your status. So when I got on Royal Caribbean, it told me I was diamond status, which was because of the status match. But if not, go and see the Crown and Anchor person. In terms of status match, the only other key one you can do, of course, is Explorer Journey. Not necessarily on Hungary, just talking about status match. Explorer Journeys will match most ultra luxury lines as well. And again, you have to apply for that. They will also, and MSC will match pretty much anything, including certain hotel chains. So if you're high status on a Hilton, I think, for example, or on certain airlines, they will status match as well. So hopefully, Heike, match that. Have a great time on Royal Caribbean. Sarah in Brooklyn, good to see you here. We've got cruise stops in September in Mazatlan, Cabo San Lucas, and Puerto Vallarta. Which is best for beach day? Any other ideas for port excursions? I like history and thrills. Okay, so certainly what I've done in the past, Sarah, is I've used Cabo San Lucas as my sort of beach day, and certainly on that group cruise we've got coming up, where we're calling both Cabo San Lucas and Puerto Vallarta. I've chosen Cabo San Lucas as my port day. Now there is a local beach you can actually walk to, because Cabo San Lucas is a tender port. You can actually walk. It's not a massively long walk, but you can walk to, there's a local beach, which is quite nice. But there are other, you can get resort passes, or often the cruise lines will offer something. Now, Puerto Vallarta, the cruise line will tend to offer more resort passes. And that's what I'm doing on my next job. I'm doing like a resort pass through the cruise line. Now, there is a site called Resort Pass that I could use. I haven't used it yet, but lots of people do. So in Mazatlan, I'm trying to remember what we did in Mazatlan. We actually, I think because I've been there before, I think we were on the hop-on, hop-off bus. Now in Cabo San Lucas, and I think also, is also renowned for whale watching, and certainly they have a lot of whales. So when, in fact, in the past, when I've sailed off Cabo San Lucas, we've seen the most incredible whales just from the deck. So certainly, Cabo San Lucas has that kind of stuff. They also have kind of high-speed boat kind of stuff as well. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. If anyone got anything better, let me know. Mark is here. If you've been following Mark, also if you follow Paul and Carol, Mark and Nanette have been on a road trip through, which looks quite exhausting, to be honest. Mark kind of looked like you got packed a lot in, but great to see you back here on board and joining the live. Appreciate that. Louise Pitt, this is an interesting one. Is it the new normal for excursion guides to just take you to the building and then leave it up to you to go inside? Louise, I haven't seen that a lot. A lot of it depends, in my experience, on what rules different places have. So, for example, I've been to some places, particularly in Europe, and some places in Venice, for example, come to mind, where guides are not allowed to do talk within a building. So they're not allowed to give commentary within a building, even if they're using those quiet box things. So certainly that could be one reason where they've literally said you have to go and explore. And I'm trying to think, when I was on a river cruise recently, we went to one place, and I can't remember where it was, where they were not allowed to go in, and they weren't allowed to go in the building and talk you through the building. And a couple of times in Japan, we had the same thing where the guides were not allowed to give any dialogue. So I think it's more linked to, in my experience to date anyway, Louise, it's been linked to what the rules of the place were. But the guide has always explained that. So I would, that's all I've seen. So I will keep an eye out for that. But that's the only time that I have done that. Tom always gives you a good brief on where he's watching. So watching on YouTube to monitor chat. Yes. So for those, I say every week, I guess, but this live runs on Facebook. If people leave a question on Facebook, I can see it, but you don't see the chat. The same on LinkedIn. I will see the question, but you don't see the chat and the discussion. Now, also what's YouTube have just introduced, and I haven't been able to check how it works yet, is that they now, when you go live, have the ability to do it landscape, which you've always done, but also do portraits. So they're eventually going to start letting you, I guess, on shorts, those people who watch it on their phone can also watch it that way around. I haven't worked out how to do that yet, but I'll start following people who are doing it and see how that all works. Right, I haven't read this question yet, so hopefully I might be able to answer it, Helen. Normally I can keep an eye ahead on the questions. So Helen has just got off a short cruise on MSC Virtuosa in Yacht Club as a trial. We were very pleasantly surprised and considering a longer option. Do you have experience of the Yacht Club on other MSC ships, and is the new Explorer a good alternative? So Helen, I have got some experience of Yacht Club on other MSC ships, not the big, massive, the ones that are even bigger than Virtuosa. So the new, World America, World Asia, World Europa. I haven't been on the Yacht Club on those as of yet. So I've been more on the Preziosa, so the kind of the class before this, and it was very similar. Obviously not as expansive, but the experience was pretty similar. But actually on Preziosa, the actual restaurant wasn't within that area. The good thing about the newer, bigger ships is everything's within that area. Certainly, I have spoken to people who like Yacht Club and have been on that Virtuosa Meraviglia class. They've gone on it was World America, I think it was, and someone who's been on Seashore, MSC Seashore, and they enjoyed the Yacht Club experience. You've got to be in mind, these ships are even bigger than Virtuosa, so they're even more kind of packed. but I think all of them still also have the inside cabin option. I always remind people that most or many of these new, certainly Virtuoso, Meraviglia and above, you can do Yacht Club on quite an attractive budget because they do have inside cabins. And on Virtuoso, I think it's 12 or 15. And you get the same thing, butler, you get the dining room, etc. So that's good. But good that you had a great time on MSC. Kathy Chatty Cruise, is good to see you here. Is there an option for waiter service for breakfast on Seabourn, not room service? Yes, in the restaurant, which is called the restaurant, in the main dining room, they do have breakfast in the main dining room, which I think is every day, including sea and port days, if you want to remember. Certainly that's where we would always go. I always prefer going to the main dining room for breakfast. And then, of course, the buffet, which you don't want to do. So yes, in the restaurant. So that sounds like you're heading off on Seabourn, hopefully very soon. Have a great time. So let's see, Lanier here, Caroline is here. Just a reminder, write the word question so I don't miss any questions. I think everyone's doing that, so it's good. Benno, hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Norwegian Cruise Line Spirit, February, New Zealand and Australia, good idea. February is a great weather for New Zealand, Australia time. It's, the weather's normally great, it's sunny, it's still their summer. It's past the crazy, because the school holidays are in sort of December because their school year end is then. So you often find December into January, places are very busy. February is very nice weather. I've also been as late as March, very nice weather. I haven't been on Spirit, so I can't comment on the ship specifically, but it's a great time of year to go to New Zealand and Australia. You'll have great sunny weather, it'll be nice and warm. Hopefully, particularly if you're heading into things like Milford Sound and stuff, it should still not. I've only been to Milford Sound later, like March time, and it's very rainy and stuff. So I don't know what it's like in February, but hopefully it's nicer. But it's a great time to go. Great time. I'm really keen to do a New Zealand, Australia, more New Zealand, Australia. And in fact, we're looking actually at February time because I'm doing in 27 an Antarctica trip to the south part of Antarctica, which goes out of Dunedin. And I'm looking at some options from New Zealand, Australia in that February, March time. So definitely it's a great time. Warren asking me if I have ever been to Screeched Inn in St. John's, Nova Scotia. I have not. But if you're recommending it, I will take a look at it because I'm going to St. John twice next year. Beginning of the year, towards June-ish time and the end of the year on 2 different cruises. So if you're recommending it, let me know and let me know what it is. Square Bear 11, how did you get your underwater photos and videos whilst in the Galapagos? 2 ways, one of which was using my GoPro, underwater GoPro. So I have a GoPro which is really old, like really, really old. And because I don't do a lot of underwater stuff, I've never upgraded it at all. So it's like, it's ancient. I've probably had it, I certainly had it way before pandemic. So that's what, 5 years. I'm guessing it's probably 8 or 10 years old. So it's probably an ancient old one. And in those, I think they probably still do it. The unit itself wasn't waterproof, so it's like a plastic casing. And you have a little strap that you can put it on or whatever. So that's one thing that I did. And the second thing was also on the trip itself, they had Silver Sea doesn't do this anymore, but they used to have an onboard videographer and photographer who would document it. And he actually followed my YouTube channel, and he did a lot of video and photography. And he offered me some of his underwater footage to use as well. So some of it is his. So the shots that he got of the seal, the massive big seal, that was his shot. But the GoPro was it. GoPro is really good underwater stuff. Now you can also use, I do have an Insta360, which I've seen a lot of people using underwater. I haven't tried it. The unit itself is waterproof. But I haven't tried that yet. So maybe on this Caribbean trip, I'm starting to plan because I'm going to do quite a lot of snorkeling stuff, and I'm thinking around, getting my GoPro out, but I should also probably take my 360 and try that as well. But that's the actual answer to your question, is that there. I've answered that question. So I'm going to take a little slug. Paul has watched the repositioning video. Excuse me. How did you handle the continual eastbound time change, losing an hour almost every other day? Thank you. Okay, so what I tend to do, Paul, to partly answer your question, is I try and go the other way, where you get an extra hour. So certainly when we do transatlantics, for example, we tend to go kind of westbound, other than one time. So where you get the extra hour. When I did the repositioning from Japan to Alaska, you gain an hour. But still that threw a lot of people, because a lot of people were then, because effectively you're shifting 7 hours and 5 hours. So lots of people were waking up crazy hours. So you'd find the buffet, which was opening at 7 or something, queues of people were there because they'd been waking up for hours. So part of the way I do is try to go that way. That probably doesn't answer your question that well. With the eastbound, what I found quite helpful, Paul, is a lot of the lines will actually do the time change in the middle of the day. So for example, Cunard used to do the time change at night, and it paid havoc with particularly the crew. So they started doing the time change in the middle of the day. And I found that really, really helpful, because you kind of get lost, because you don't have that whole concept every night getting to bed and you're losing an hour and you're kind of losing sleep, and it's throwing your body clock up completely. So it's worth checking if you're doing that, if that's the case. But what I try to do is I try to get myself, when I'm planning my evening, around that time change. So I almost mentally think around, okay, so even when we were gaining an hour, I was thinking, okay, my plan is still to go to bed at 10 or 11 or whatever time. I'm a party animal. So I would sort of plan around that time. So I would sort of dine. So instead of dining effectively, the clock's moving that one way. So effectively dining at 5, I'm sort of dining what would be 6, if you know what I mean. So I'm trying to keep things as constant as possible to keep that rhythm. Sorry, it's a rather long, complicated answer. Hopefully that did answer you. Tara, for a Northern Lights cruise, which would you recommend? I'm doing the Antarctic Explorer cruise on Viking in January, so it's not this year, but definitely on the list. Also, thank you. So Antarctic Explorer cruise. Okay, so you're doing Antarctica. Okay, so that's a different point. Sorry. So in terms of Northern Lights, one of the things that I tend to recommend, Tara, is, you kind of, that sort of October, November time, it's still quite cold, but the night's drawn in, and that seems to be a very good time for Northern Lights. It's also where you see quite a lot of options. So I would take a look at things like Hurtigruten, for example, and HX Expeditions, because they've spun off from 2 separate companies. A lot of them will do a Northern Lights guarantee, which pretty much means that you're slap bang in the middle of the season. So they're quite a good one to look at. Out of the UK, you'll find lines like Fred Olsen and Saga also run a lot of Northern Lights cruises. Now, bear in mind, though, once you get to that time of the year, the seas can be pretty choppy and pretty stormy. So some people are less keen on it because they find it a little bit bumpy, as it were. But often, it's only when you're out at the open sea. But that's what I would recommend. Take a look at some of those lines. Oh, great! Of course, Carrie and Mike are in Venice. I forgot, of course, that you were heading there this time. Have a fabulous time. Hope you're having a brilliant time. I met up with them in Seattle. They're patrons of mine, and they're doing a great Italian kind of trip and stuff. So great. Thanks for signing in. Warren, what do you think of Crystal compared to Regent? So I'm actually working on, I'll do a little plug. It's actually just being edited, and it won't be out probably for a month or so. Comparison of the ultra luxury lines. So I'm comparing Crystal, Regent, Silversea, and Seabourn against each other. But basically, the key thing, Warren, was they are kind of similar in so many ways, like all the ultra luxury are. But certainly Crystal at the moment has 2 ships. They're relatively old ships. They have been renovated, as you know, reduced capacity. I like what they've done with the ships. I like the old style ship. They've got some new builds coming from 28 onwards, 3 new builds. We don't know the names of them yet, but I think by the end of the year, they're going to release some more drawings, renderings, and stuff like that. I really enjoyed my time on Crystal. The food was outstanding. I still think it probably is the best food of all of the 4 of them. And service, absolutely is, again, top marks there. Partly because the crew have worked for Crystal, some of them for 20 years, and they all know each other, so they know how each other works, etc., etc. I think it's going to be interesting as they expand. How do they manage to keep that? After Crystal kind of went bust and then got re-energized, reanimated, whatever the word is, by Abercrombie and Kent, so much of the crew came back. Now, because they have 2 ships, they're obviously very limited. They're much more limited on itineraries. So what they tend to do is they run lots of kind of almost one-way itineraries to try and cover as much of the world, because there are people who love Crystal. So to get new itineraries, they just keep moving. Effectively, they don't sort of home base somewhere and do a lot of repeat itineraries. So if you can also do some quite nice combined trips or some kind of unusual itineraries. Now, Regent obviously has a much bigger fleet. What I like about Regent, I'm a big fan of Regent, is they are probably now the most all-inclusive they are the most all-inclusive of all of them, because now the Silver Sea have moved to their new fare structure. Flights and excursions are all add-ons. Regent still has the most amount of inclusion. So if you want a more all-inclusive fare, more inclusive experience, you've paid for it, you've got your excursions and everything kind of in, then Regent is a plus for that. Certainly Crystal has a bigger bigger range of wine, included wines, drinks, etc. They had massive included drinks. Regent, I really like Regent. I think because of the number of ships they've got, they have quite diverse itineraries. They tend to focus much more on iconic ports and places. So their itineraries are probably a little bit less innovative or adventurous in some ways than Crystal, because they really focus on going to kind of must-see places. The ships are all the same now in terms of layout. Obviously the Navigator, which they're getting rid of, but the ships are the same format, and I think Prestige coming next year will have a slightly different layout. But I also like, you go on the ships and they're very familiar, things in the same place and stuff. And service very good. I think food is excellent on Regent. For me, it's Crystal then Regent in terms of food. I like the specialty dining a lot. Obviously Crystal has Nobu, which is outstanding. They have Osteria. So for me, they are kind of close, but Regent is a little bit more all-inclusive, a little bit more old school is probably the wrong word. Traditional maybe. Crystal is all about family, and you really feel like you're on a family line. So now with the changed capacity, now Crystal reduced capacity is about the same. But if you need to like an old class, old style ship, its layout is kind of a little bit quirky and unusual. They have quirky cabins and stuff like that on Crystal. I like both of them a lot. Let's have a look. McClaim, I don't know if I'm able to answer this, but insurance when coming out of Brazil is low for airlift. Thinking to buy Global Rescue as a supplement. Do you know anything about them? Okay, so I think what you're saying is in your insurance package that you're buying, you don't have enough. So there is I'm aware of them. I have never added them on because I've never had to. There is another company. I'm trying to think, because I actually bought insurance with them when I went on safari in Tanzania because it was recommended. And it's not called, it's something like International Rescue, but International Rescue, of course, is Thunderbirds or Go. But it's something like International Rescue. If you kind of Google International Rescue airlift stuff. But I have heard of Global Rescue. I haven't used them, though. Okay, Elizabeth, we're spending 2 days in Tokyo, beginning of an April pre-cruise. If you could spend longer, I would strongly encourage you to try and spend longer. What should we definitely not miss? It's our first time in Japan. So, Elizabeth, before my one Japan cruise, I spent 4 days in Tokyo, and then I went back for my last one and spent 5 days, I think. and even then I thought I hadn't spent enough. So if you can spend more time, would be my first tip. In terms of must-do things, I would say you want to tick off one of the kind of the iconic things, which is go to the Shibuya crossing. If you can do it at night, sort of rush hour time, it's great. That whole Shibuya area is very interesting. You've got these kind of crazy little shops and stuff, but Shibuya crossing is quite interesting. I would try and go up the Skytree Tower. If you can book it, there's a Tokyo Tower, the Skytree Tower, because you get an incredible perspective of Tokyo itself. The National Museum is also really interesting. You can really delve into a lot of the history around those samurais, etc. That's really great. I'm just trying to think, because what I actually have, Elizabeth, and maybe I'll try and link it. I'm going to make a little note for myself here. I actually have shorts Tokyo. I did a series of shorts around things to do in Tokyo from my first trip and also from my second trip. So if you actually if you go to my channel, I'll try and leave some links afterwards in the show notes. If you go to the channel, the Tips of Tokyo channel on YouTube, there's a little search button. If you just type in Tokyo there, and then it should bring up the shorts that I've done. And it's literally, because I've got 3 days, one of them is called 3 Days in Tokyo. And I did things like I went to the Sensojo temple, which is an absolute must-see, for example. And then I didn't go to Skytree that time. I didn't go to Skytree second time. But I've got 3 days of things to do, and also a little bit about how to get around, like using the metro. That is going to be the best way rather than me rambling on. So go to the channel, search there Tokyo. I will try and put links to those in these show notes, so maybe 10 minutes or so after this. If you look in the show notes, they should be there. Just want to right question, but I spotted this one. Brom 1875. Looking at doing a P&O reposition cruise from Barbados to Southampton, possibly in 2027 as a single traveler, what would you consider to be a good and fair price, including flights? I don't know. Because I don't know P&O pricing. P&O is increasingly become quite good value, so I don't know offhand. What I would encourage you to do, though, is actually work with a travel agent like my travel agent Sarah Bolton, for example, and get her kind of looking at what the best option is. Because as a single traveler, you're likely to be paying double, so you want to find some fairly sharpish stuff. Obviously, not double flights, but the cabin would be double. So a lot of it hinges around: are you going an inside cabin, ocean view cabin, a suite, a balcony? There's just so many kind of permutations, so it's hard to give you a direct answer on that. There are sites. What I would encourage you, obviously, you can do like dummy bookings on the P&O site as well. Peter asking if, when you were in Palm Springs, did you go to any of the closing option resorts? No, we stayed in an Airbnb and with my mother-in-law. I don't think she would appreciate it if we booked into clothing option resorts. Clothing option resorts in Palm Springs, used to seem to be a big thing. They seem much less of a big thing these days, but I might be wrong there. But no, we didn't. That would have been quite funny, booking Sally into a clothing optional resort. I've never actually stayed in I've never stayed in a clothing optioning resort anywhere even in my misspent youth, and in my misspent youth. Teresa, returning after a 15-year hiatus from cruising, appears cruise lines are moving away from solo travelers. Agree. Teresa, yes and no. So certainly the cruise lines are very focused on new to travel, new to cruise, and extremely focused on families. So you'll even find lines that didn't used to be very family focused, like Holland America, Celebrity, which used to be more couples, are definitely advertising and encouraging more families, particularly in places like Alaska and the Caribbean, and in peak seasons. You've even got Explore Journeys, for example, which I realize I didn't answer in an earlier question. They have kids clubs in the luxury space. So it's not so much that they're moving away. It's not as, I think it probably didn't grow as fast as we had hoped it would. So a lot of the the lines, particularly in the premium space, like Holland America and so on, they introduced a few solar cabins. Cunard put solar cabins on, but not that many lines have introduced a lot of solar cabins. The only line that has really lent into solar is Norwegian Cruise Line, in that sort of resort value premium space, where they have the big solar cabin space, with a little pass where you get your own, all the solar cabins in one area and a lounge and so on. They're all quite small in the inside. So you'll find it's kind of mixed. If you are patient and plan ahead, you can often find solo deals. So I do travel, probably 8-9 times out of 10 solo, and I try to plan ahead with solo deals. So you're keeping an eye out for solo deals. So I sign up for all the newsletters to see when solo deals are going. So you're absolutely right. No cruise line is leaning heavily into solos. It's a bit hit and miss. Saga has solo cabins, but it's not a lot. And if you want to get a solo cabin, you have to book, be ready when they release the itineraries. And in some cases, in most cases, you're going to be paying twice. Now, at the upper end, once you get to Crystal and Silver Sea, Gillespie Seabourn, they are, and Ponant, for example, they are encouraging solo travelers, but it's a kind of shoulder periods, not peak times. So if you want to go peak times, less so. There are a couple of sites like Vacations to Go that track a lot of solo deals and others. I actually have a video, Teresa, on solo travel. If you just go to the channel and search solo, and I talk a little bit about how to find solo deals. But you're right, they're not leaning into solo. They're actually looking to have 3 or 4 people in a cabin rather than one person in a cabin. In fact, you'll find, and this has happened on some cruise lines, particularly in the premium space like Holland America and P&O and so on, is they sometimes will bump people or move people if the ship is very full. So if you've booked a cabin which has capacity for 3 people and there's only 1 or 2 of you, they will look to move you to a cabin that only has 2 berths, doesn't have a 3rd berth, a sofa bed or whatever. And that's happening, not a lot, but it's happening every now and again. Ibis Music. Is it true of Celebrity that it's best to book the next trip on board? It depends in reality. So booking on board any cruise line is, every single cruise line will offer deals. So they will offer sometimes, an extra 5% off. They'll offer onboard credit. They might offer the ability to move your cruise around without any penalty. Every single cruise line does that. However, they may also be running other promotions that are better than that. So whilst it's a good idea if you really want to go on another Celebrity trip to look at what the offer is, do bear in mind that you might find other offers that they do are better. So for example, Celebrity are running an offer at the moment, which is second person at 70% off. Now, if you're on board now, you'd get that deal plus on top of the deal. But if you're actually wanting to go on Celebrity, it would be worth booking that deal now, because when you go on board, they're going to give you 5% off, but they're not going to give you 70% off. Hopefully I've explained that. So what I always encourage people to do is, if you're really clear, I want to go on that Celebrity trip or that Norwegian trip or whatever line you're on, and it's worth waiting on board and seeing what deal you can get. But keep an eye on the deals, because they won't let you switch to that deal, the better deal. So for example, another thing you can do, and I'm not 100% sure, no, Celebrity do because I use this. So for example, when I went on Celebrity, Ibis Music, is I knew I wanted to go back on Celebrity, and I was waiting for the new itineraries to come out. But what you could do is you could buy a deposit certificate, which gave you the extra, I think it was 5%, and it might have been some onboard credit, but whatever the deal they're offering on board. So you could pay the deposit, which I can't remember what it was. It's maybe £300, $500, something like that. And it locked you in the deal. So then when they released the itineraries and the cruise that I wanted came up, and it was interestingly running at the 70% off. So I booked it when it came on board, so it was released, and they were doing the promotion, which was second person 70% off. I booked it and I could apply that certificate. So buying the certificate is maybe a better idea, and then you can play around. But obviously, if you know the ship and you and you know exactly what you want to do, then of course it is worth doing it. And that's true of every cruise line. CLT Geek, is there a dish or food item you've got on a ship which you think about and wish you could find on land? There isn't one dish. The one thing I do wish is, lines that have caviar. I love caviar, but I'm never going to pay the price of caviar on land. When I was on Crystal, as I was mentioning earlier, they've got a Nobu restaurant, which was magnificent, but I'm not sure I would pay, or not sure. I haven't never gone to a Nobu restaurant on land because it's so expensive. So sometimes those things that I just wouldn't pay, so I can enjoy on board. So like on Silver Sea, you could order a caviar as a little like canapé. I ordered a couple of times, for example, or on Cunard, on Queen's Grill, you can do that. So it's probably more around those. I can't think of any dish offhand that I wish I could find on land. It's more those that I just don't want to. I just didn't want to pay for it afterwards. Carl, how can you tell if the sailing they're booked on is sold out? Carl, a couple of ways. Normally, you'll find if you go onto the booking sites, if you go, I don't know, if you're going on Norwegian or Silver Sea or whatever, you're going on Holland America. If you go on to the site, the website, you'll find sometimes certain cruises will show as waitlisted, which either means they're sold out or something's going on, like they're about to get cancelled or rescheduled, or sometimes there's a big alert because something goes waitlisted suddenly and then they cancel it because they've chartered the ship or whatever. But normally the big clue is waitlisted. Sometimes what you can do on some sites, like I know you can do it on Celebrity, I think you can do it on Holland America, a few others, is when you put in dates, it gives you the option of only show cruises with availability, or it says exclude sold out cruises. So you can tick that in, and then you can say, oh, my cruise is not there. Or simply you just go to your cruise and you start a dummy booking and see if how many cabins show up. So for example, I do that often a little bit before a cruise. I haven't done it for my next cruise, but I will go on often, particularly when you start getting all those emails about upgrade bids, because if you get an email offering an upgrade bid, it doesn't mean that the ship's not sold out. But I will sometimes go on and say, okay, let's have a look if it's showing me any cabins. So for example, we're doing a crossing next year in June, and friends of ours who'd never been on Queen Mary 2 went on a little taster cruise, and they're like, we want to do Transatlantic. So I went on and did a dummy booking. I literally went on, put in the cruise we were on, and I could see that there was literally only one grade available. And I can't remember what it was. It might have been like, it was like the most expensive cabin on the ship or something like that. I think that's right. I think it was like the Q1, it was like £20,000 or something. But I could see that there's nothing else available. That's basically how I do it. So it's a bit of kind of plodding away work, if you like. DMAC, hopefully someone has answered this question. If not, please, I have not been on Bliss, so I can't answer that. But if anyone has, please do answer that question. Caroline, if all cruising was about to end forever and you could choose one last cruise, where would you go to with which cruise? I would go to Antarctica, without a shadow of a doubt, and I would go on Silver Sea, on Endeavour, probably. Or I would go on Ponant, Commandant Chaco. I haven't been on that before, but Mark, who was here earlier, has been on that, and it just looks magnificent. It's very high end. But that's what I would do. I would go to that most exotic place. If Antarctica was out of the mix, I would do a Panama Canal trip. I would go on a cruise line that was small enough to get me through the old canal. Definitely. She's asking about biometric screening in the UK affecting cruise travel. I haven't heard anything. Around that at all affecting that. I think it's because, like, whenever I go into the US, for example, or maybe you're talking about the EU. So let me bring that question back up again. How are the new biometrics? Oh, in the UK. So it's fine when not at all. Because if I if I want to cruise out of Canada to go to Alaska, and I'm going to say, fly into Canada, or I fly into the US to join a cruise, we have to do all that anyway. You have to get your your ESTA and whatever. Although actually in the US now I have global entry, so it's very quick. But anyway, that could be decided. And I'm just reminded, a little plug here. Love your latest video and was amused to find as a 47-year-old I could relate to a lot of the points made. So just remind you, the video that came out yesterday is cruise tips for people over 55. I had a lot of people saying a lot of it actually applied. And then, of course, the 60-year-olds being very upset, saying we can beat the youngsters, which I think I could probably do as well often. Alistair, good to see you here. Alistair is someone I met years and years ago, who's a journalist, travel writer. And yes, Alistair, the comments do appear live, but the comments don't appear. So on LinkedIn, you don't see the chat. You don't see the chat, unfortunately, that people ask. I guess that's the question. So Mary, on Mary's question, this is just back to hopefully I answered that a bit earlier. So when they're heading, when you're adding an hour, they do it at night, because actually at night it works better for the crew, because the crew get an extra hour night's sleep. When they're heading the other way, so they're heading eastbound and have to lose time, they do it at midday because it's better for the crew. So that's basically what most lines do, if that makes sense. So they do like crew like it when they get the night extra hour at night when they're heading. Say if you're getting from the UK to the US, they like it happening at night. And actually, it was crew pressure that got them to change it at lunchtime, because it was killer. So you finishing their shift late and losing an hour and getting up again. Stephen, the eSIM that I used in Japan was Airalo. I should probably put a link in that. I didn't actually have it in the beginning. So Airalo, I do actually have I think I have a discount code for Airalo. I've used it in Japan because my service doesn't work. I have quite a good roaming plan globally where I can use my included minutes in most countries, but not in Japan. So I used Airalo in Japan specifically. On both times I've been there, it was really, really good, really inexpensive, and it was fantastic. Now, Airalo, you buy specific territories. Now, if you want to use an eSIM at sea, there's another one called Gig Sky. So I'll put a link for that as well, because I do know if you use the code TFT10, I think it is, in your first order, you get a discount. So I'll put that in the notes below. But certainly Airalo, I used in Japan. It was fantastic. It worked great. And I used it the second time because it worked so well. But what with Gig Sky, if you look at the Gig Sky site, so it's GIGSKY, they have the ability to use your eSIM on board. So particularly if you're not using a lot of internet, they connects and some to satellite and connects and some through Skylink. So Starlink, sorry. So and I've used Gig Sky. I tested out when we did my group cruise around Canada and stuff. So if you don't use the internet a lot, Gig Sky is way cheaper than buying the Wi-Fi package. But Airalo is land-based. So I'll leave those. Claudia, the Carnival group has said they will not do status matching. You're right. It would be fantastic if across the Carnival group, but actually, is it Josh Weinstein? I can't remember the name of the CEO. He was asked a couple of earning reports ago if Carnival would follow at the time of Royal Caribbean, and he said no. The brands are individual; they do their own thing, and no, they won't, which is a pity. I agree. Rhonda is joining Explorer Journeys, which is fantastic. One of my favorite sites in Barcelona. If you've got a chance to book the Familia Sagrada Familia, that is, that for me is the must-see thing. But book way ahead so you can get inside would be for me the key thing. Mark asking me, would I prefer Silversea or Seabourn? Personally, Silversea. They have a bigger fleet, 12 ships in all. Quite a wide diverse of ships. Seabourn obviously reducing capacity. I just prefer the wider range of special dining. I like the itineraries a little bit more overall, but they're both absolutely great. Paul is saying not keen on shorts, but we know that. Yeah, so the shorts I literally did because I just found them really. I experiment with shorts. I don't really do shorts, but those little one-day things are pretty good. Robert asked the question with Gig Sky, so hopefully that was the same question. Right, so we're rapidly running out of time. Let's see if I can quickly get a few more questions in. Sizzle HQ, what line would you recommend for a seasoned solo cruiser but in their 30s? It seems like I would try Virgin. They do have solo cabins. They are buzzy. They're premium, so they are a little bit pricey. So you're going to find them a bit more pricier than Norwegian or Caribbean, depending on what grade you travel on. So they're more like kind of pricing, like Celebrity Holland America pricing. But I would definitely try Virgin. It's got kind of energy, a little bit late night. The average age is kind of older than they expected, but I would absolutely say Virgin Voyages is the one to go for. Absolutely. For a question. Alice has got a question. Would you consider sailing on the new Neoliner Origin sail-powered cargo ship currently on a maiden voyage on a monthly transatlantic passages between Saint-Nazaire, Saint-Pierre, and Baltimore? She has 6 stylish French. I haven't looked at that, but yes, I would absolutely be interested in taking a look at that. So I need to take a look at that one. I'm sort of aware of it. I had ages ago booked on a freight ship, because you can do freight ships. They always have less than 12 passengers, because once you get 12 passengers under maritime law, they have to have a doctor. So that's why they will have 6 cabins, I guess. So they'll never have more than 12 passengers on. It's probably why they do that as well. But yes, I would definitely look at it. So I definitely need to take a look at this, at that. I have a back-to-back cruise plan on Celebrity Edge, Australia, New Zealand. Interestingly, I was talking earlier on, and if you heard that, we were looking at our February, March, I think, and we're actually looking at Celebrity Edge, sort of a back-to-back Australia, New Zealand. We're looking at it's over 50% sea days. What do you think of this? Dale, I mean, a lot of it depends on whether you like sea days. I personally, depends on how well you know the region. It depends where you're going. For me, going to Australia and New Zealand, I want to see more ports. So certainly some of the itineraries I've looked at are much more port intensive. But if it's the itinerary that I looked at, calling up part of Australia up to the Barrier Reef, like Port Douglas, and then it goes round to Auckland. The itinerary itself is quite nice. It does call on some very interesting ports. So it really hinges a little bit around whether you want to do a more intensive look. I mean, the advantage with Celebrity Edge, it's a great ship. It's not crazy expensive. A lot of those other more intense ones are much smaller, much more expensive ships. Although do take a look at Holland America, which is the same category. It's not as modern as Celebrity Edge, but Holland America has some quite interesting itineraries around that area, which are you'll find them about the same price if you are worried about want more intense things. But in reality, you've got a couple of sea days by definition to get to New Zealand and to get back, which is what I'm guessing you're doing. That's kind of going to be quite a few sea days in itself. So we have churned through questions. We've kind of run out of time. Let me do one more quick question. Best month to cruise to Japan. I like going in October, but I've been there at different times of the year. October's really nice and warm. It's a great time to go. However, most people want to go kind of March, April time, because that's the cherry blossom season, but it's quite cold. I was there in March. It was pretty cold. I love going in October. Anyway, so thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for the questions. I will try and take a look at the extra questions I didn't get a chance to answer in the time. I will be back next Sunday, same time, same place. Have a great rest of the weekend. I'll try and get those bits popped in the notes, as I said, and take a look at that video if you haven't. Have a great rest of the weekend. Thanks so much for joining and the fabulous questions as